Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Going to preview 3 heavyweight fights in this video. Arslanbek Makhmudov vs Agit Kabayel, Filip Hrgovic vs Mark De Mori, and also Frank Sanchez vs Junior Fast. So these 3 obviously all on the Day of Reckoning card, all weighed in, all ready to go. You have Makhmudov, who was 262 pounds, which is, round his usual weight. He's around 260 to 265. And Agit Kabayel, 241 pounds. This is a 10-round fight. So they must have paid Kabayel a lot to take this one. Kabayel's basically had the begging bowl out in recent years. He's tried to use his unbeaten record, a glossy record, a win over Derek Chisora back in 2017, to try to coax the likes of Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury to give him a title shot and give him a payday. So they really must have paid over the odds here to get him to basically crawl out from his 1 fight a year routine that he's been on for more than 5 years. This will be the first time in 5 years that he's actually fought more than once a year. So he did fight earlier this year against Argon Smikici, and maybe that's going to be a bit of a foreshadow what will happen in this fight, because you had Smikici just all out let his hands go, and he hurt and he dropped Kabayel, but Smikici gassed. But you had a case with Arslanbek Makhmudov. He's a guy 18-0 at this point, 17 knockouts. He's there to try to take your head off. He's going to come after you, and he's going to be basically trying to knock your block off with a right uppercut or a right hand. And Kabayel, I expect, at 241 pounds, he's a little bit lighter than some more recent fights that he's been in. We're going to see him on his bike, boxing and moving. But I think the thing is, Makhmudov, with the relentless pressure, will eventually catch up with him. And I think he's going to hurt him and stop him. But I think until that happens, it's probably going to look like Makhmudov's pretty rudimentary. That there's this big, hulking Russian guy who can't seem to get some of his big shots off and landed against a guy who looks pretty good, sort of going backwards and popping a jab, throwing the odd shot to the body. And we have to remember, though, that this is also a bit of a step up in opposition to some degree. Makhmudov's faced, a couple of decent names like Carlos Takam. There was Johnny Rice earlier, but they have struggled to get him quality opposition of late. Kabayel would be the first unbeaten guy that he's faced who's in his prime, and, well, at least a few years ago was rated as, I think for some of us who'd followed the division closely, he was a guy that definitely had top 15, top 20 talent, but he was just wasting himself away in the best of his prime, doing nothing, facing basically nobody. So the problem is Kabayel has coming into this fight. He's been inactive, far too inactive in recent years, and I think there has been diminishing returns. He hasn't looked as good in some of these fights. He's clearly been hanging out for a payday, and he's obviously got it in this one, but he's going to have to put on the fight of his career, I think, to get this one. I think he has to be switched on the whole time. He's going to have to, and I think this is the thing. Kabayel will basically go for 6 or 7 rounds at a pretty decent clip, on his bike, boxing and moving. Well, will probably be the strategy, try to keep moving, but I think Makhmudov's eventually going to catch up with him. And when he does, it will be brutal. He will stop Agit Kabayel. That is my prediction. A knockout win for Arslanbek Makhmudov. But I know some people will say, well, what about Carlos Takam? That was a different sort of fight. Kabayel, if Smikici is putting hands on him, putting him down, almost putting him out, I think Makhmudov, probably, who's maybe a bit more lumbering than Smikici, not as fleet of foot, but he is like a seeking missile. He's just going to come after you, relentless. And it might look a little bit untidy at times, but eventually he will clobber him and put him down. My prediction there. Filip Hrgovic versus Mark De Mori. I guess the less said about this fight, the better. So Hrgovic, 16-0. I mean, 6 years and 16 fights. his link up between Wasserman Boxing, which was formerly Sauerland Boxing, and more recently, the last 3 or 4 years, he's been co-promoted by Matchroom, just really hasn't sort of landed him enough fights and not against enough quality opposition. He's now the IBF mandatory, but he's defending that against Mark De Mori. I mean, come on. I mean, when this fight was announced, I had a look at BoxRec, and at that point, I haven't had a look now, but De Mori was like almost number 300 in the world. It was like 295. It's kind of embarrassing. What was the point of landing him on this card to then set him up with Mark De Mori? I mean, we've already had enough Filip Hrgovic showcase fights, to last a lifetime. So this one is going to be over early. It says it's for 10 rounds, but Filip Hrgovic in under 2 rounds, possibly the first. And then to the other fight, it's kind of curious because, Frank Sanchez is or has been a PBC fighter, so promoted by Warriors Boxing or his promoters, Warriors Boxing and Ural Boxing, but fighting on PBC cards. It's kind of like he was in that PBC stable, but they weren't matching him with anyone for the most part, but somehow they've managed to get him onto this card. But then they line him up with Junior Farr, pull Junior Farr effectively off the sofa. Farr, since he lost to Lucas Brown, a year ago, has not been up to much. But Frank Sanchez needs to show his quality, needs to go in there and basically starch him. But Frank Sanchez at 238 pounds, I don't know about that. Frank Sanchez at higher weights isn't as effective. But then again, Junior Farr at 278 pounds, it looks like he got off the couch. But he has been in Deontay Wilder's camp, so more good rounds to prepare him for a big fight. But Frank Sanchez has got to go in there, look good, and get the job done because, he's in the Who Needs Him club. He's a guy, he doesn't speak English, doesn't seem to attract fans, could not sell out a phone booth. So you have a case where he's got to go in and put in performances. But the heavier version of Frank Sanchez, the 240-pound version, doesn't look nearly as effective as the one that's in the low 230s, who's quick and agile, who can move in and out. So who knows what to expect from Sanchez, apart from he should win this fight. What do you make of these fights? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.